Hello, hello, and thank you all so much for spending this time with me here today. I'm very honored to be here with you. And today I want to talk about the Choose You Now diet. This is the book I always wanted to write. It published last December, and it's basically a compilation of three things: my personal journey, all that I learned in academia and my internship and my clinical rotations, and finally, all of the wisdom and experience I've aggregated over 18 years working with thousands of people in a very intimate, amazing setting, where I gleaned the difference between how similar we all are and what we think that we're different. So basically, I've worked with people in different countries, in different parts of the world, different cultures, different age groups, different backgrounds. But there's so much that is generalizable. And so that's why I'm hoping to share this with you, that it will resonate and maybe it will help you on your journey. So my mom always says that I danced before I walked, and I love to dance. And so I grew up dancing, and I grew up in front of the ballet in the mirrors, right? With my leotard and my tights and my ballet slippers. And I spent hours upon hours practicing my pliés and my pirouettes and my tendus. And I loved dancing so much. And, I was growing up. And so in front of the mirror, you're kind of watching yourself, your body starts to change at that certain age. I was probably around, 10, 11. And one day, my dance teacher called out to me from across the room. She was at the record player, and I was standing with my ballerina colleagues. And she called out, "Julie," I was called Julie back then. She said, "Julie, cut out your snacks." And I kind of wanted the floor to swallow me up. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it was humiliating and I didn't understand it. And I didn't realize that that was going to be something that was literally going to change the trajectory of my entire life. But it was. I wanted to learn everything there was to learn about diet and body image and nutrition and weight loss and everything in between. And so I read everything I can get my hands on. This was before the internet, of course. So I just kept reading and reading all the books. And then one day I stumbled onto something else that I did not realize was going to change the trajectory of my career. And that was this book, Diet for a New America by John Robbins. This was the first book that connected diet to health and environment and the animals. And it was revolutionary. And as soon as I finished that book, I knew I did not want to have anything to do with that industry anymore, but I didn't know what that meant. And I don't cook. I was a teenager at the time. My parents were like, "You're going to be a veg what?" And I didn't know what that meant. So I just decided to just cut out animal products. So I'd eat the side dishes that my mom would cook. I'd eat the granola bars, anything that wasn't animal based. And I was just persisting. Now, my parents, being great parents, were worried, as any great parents would be. And so they staged what I like to refer to as my intervention. They took me to a steakhouse with our family friend, Kendra, a nurse. And Kendra proceeded to tell me, after I ordered the teriyaki steak with a pineapple ring on top, that I was going to be deficient in protein and B12 and iron. And as a teenage girl, I was scared. But I'm looking at my steak that came, and once you know, you can't unknow. So it was a really hard first bite to swallow. But I was nervous, and so I got talked back into eating the normal way, back to how I had been eating, how most people around me, everyone around me was eating. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, the vegetarians aren't just dying off like flies. We're not hearing stories in the headlines about that. There has to be more to this than meets the eye. So I was determined to figure it out. And I kept reading and reading and reading. The little caveat here, the little short side story is that many years later, I had the privilege to meet this man who changed my life so dramatically. I think that was 2010 or something like that. And that was one of the highlights of my entire life. It was so beautiful. He's such a beautiful man. So that was kind of fun. Fast forward to high school. So in high school, so I'm in LA, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. So like most people here, I was an actress. And so I did a lot of acting, and I got into a very prestigious arts high school where I did a lot of theater. I was doing Shakespeare, and I got to play my dream role of Juliet in a theater company that I was in. And I got to play what's her name? Roxanne in Cyrano de Bergerac. And I just loved theater. I loved acting so much. And one day, so finally I graduated high school and I was going off to college. I was going to be pre-med, but I was leaving acting behind, but I still wanted to act. So finally, when I was 16, before I went off to college, my parents were like, okay, finally get an agent because you could drive yourself to all the auditions. So I did. And then I was going out and doing, a little TV, film, some modeling, a little bit here and there, commercial stuff like that. And then I went off to college. But while I had this agent, one of my agents said to me, here we go again, Juliana, you probably need to cut out a few pounds. So I'm going to set you up with my trainer. So I was like, okay, well, I always loved exercising. I was kind of obsessed with exercise anyway. So let's see what this trainer could teach me. Well, I fell in love with personal training because I was like, oh my gosh, I could actually work out with people all day long. Like, this is what I want to do. So I thought I'm going to just become a personal trainer. So while I'm acting and auditioning on the side, I will have, a great career. And I did. And so I finished college, became a personal trainer. And then people kept asking me about like, well, what should I eat? Well, I didn't want to spit back the one chapter of nutrition that I had been taught in my personal training to become certified. It was literally one chapter, and I didn't feel qualified to give nutrition advice. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm not done with school. And I immediately applied to graduate school in nutrition. Well, this was the first time in my life that I loved school, and I was getting straight A's, and it was like the most exciting thing I've ever learned. And then little hints started to percolate while I was in school. For instance, I was reading about how we all had to have 3 servings of dairy every day or our bones are going to disintegrate. I'm exaggerating, but make sure your patients are eating 3 servings of dairy. Well, then I noticed that at the little bottom corner of that pamphlet or that book or whatever, it was the Dairy Council had written that paper. It's like, that's interesting. And then one time I went to the American Dietetics Association. Now it's I can never get this straight, Academy of Nutrition Dietetics. So I went to their big annual meeting, and I'll never forget walking into the big expo for the first time. And like the biggest, hugest booths were the dairy industry and Burger King and McDonald's and all of the stuff, all of the junk food, all of the food that we're not supposed to be recommending, but they had the biggest booths. So that was another seed that was planted. So I finished grad school and I have babies. And what else do you do when you have babies? You have nothing else to do. So I started reading again. I'm kidding. It's a full-time job, but I gave up my personal training practice. So I started reading again. And I'm like, you know what? I think it's time. I'm ready to do this. I know to look. I found out that, you can get protein from plants. And you can get iron even better sourced from plants. And I learned all of those things because I was able to now dive directly into the literature, answer all those questions. And I had confidence to dive all the way in. And I did it. I cut out animal products and I went whole food plant-based. And lo and behold, an entire lifetime of suffering stopped. I had the worst sinus infections my entire childhood. I used to fall asleep in high school because of my Benadryl, because I couldn't breathe through my nose. Gone. I had acne no matter what I did. I had every facial and product and medication. I tried everything. It would not go away. Gone when I went plant-based. My GI tract, everything just got better and easier. And I just felt fabulous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to start doing this, because now it's transitioning from trainer to dietitian. I'm going to start doing this with my patients. And lo and behold, as a healthcare provider, what I was taught in grad school and in my rotations was that your role is to mitigate the progression of disease. And your role is to mitigate the need to increase medication dosage. Well, I was seeing people get off medications regularly, reversing diagnoses. Energy up, acne also, psoriasis gone, like just incredible, extraordinary things day after day. I cannot believe what I have witnessed in the last 18 years. It's just been extraordinary. So that was it. I couldn't stop talking about it. And here we are. So I put all of this together in the Choose You Now diet in a kind of a format of, here's what I've learned. And it comes from, I approach it from 3 different angles. First, of course, a whole food plant-based diet, because it's the healthiest way to eat that we know of. And I've also incorporated time-restricted eating because I found extraordinary benefits with that for myself and with my clients. And it just makes sense when you're looking at all of the data from before and the stuff that's unfolding now. So I implement that with my clients as well. And then the magic, the humanity comes in, because you know what? I will not give my clients a meal plan. I refuse, because what's that going to do? It's like giving a client a soup versus teaching them how to make soup. And that's what I would rather do. I want to teach my clients, how do you do this? And how do you make your life work so that you could achieve the goals that you want? How do you choose you now? It's all about our humanity and our psychology and our behaviors and our environment and all of that. And that's the magic. That's the difference between a diet and a transformation. And that's why I'm so privileged that I get to do the work that I do. It's just so rewarding. We live in what I like to refer to as a modern day trifecta of abundance. We basically have three things that are against us all the time. We basically have a very powerful evolutionary physiological drive to eat enough. It's a survival mechanism. We have to eat enough calorie so that when there's no calorie and it's scarce, we can survive. Fundamental, we haven't out genetified that yet. It is still dominant inside of our DNA. But we're also living in times when there is no scarcity. There is, in fact, ubiquitous temptation all day long. On the TV, on your Instagram, your social feeds, all of the, like wherever you walk, you're seeing food. You can get food delivered to your door 24/7. It's usually not the healthy kind. And usually the healthy food are not what people are overeating and being tempted with all the time. We're being bombarded by hyperpalatable foods that don't help support health or our long-term goals. And the third part of this trifecta is this vast normalization of overeating and of obesity as well. Like, for instance, if you say no to dessert, well, why? Why don't you want to have dessert? And people, it's very psychological. People get defensive because they think, well, if you're not eating dessert, maybe I should eat dessert. So instead, they just try to get you to eat dessert with them. Or if you just say, no, I'm not hungry. What? Oh, just one bite, or just try this, or just try that. It's just normal to overeat. And if you don't overeat, and if you're on like a time restricted eating type of plan, and you are, in the world, you'll see it feels like everyone's always eating. Everyone's always overeating. It's the norm. It's abnormal to say no, or to say no to dessert, or to choose to eat a plant-based diet, or to choose to eat healthy. And obesity is also becoming super normalized, which part of it is good, because my mission in this world is to get rid of guilt and shame surrounding diet and body image. That is where I started. But it's also not healthy to be obese. And so we have to address this in a very sensitive way, but it has to be addressed. So the 10 tenets is how I broke it down. The 10 tenets to sustainable weight loss. And we're going to go through all of these. Basically, the book is in two parts. It's choose and then systematize. And then a whole bunch of, I think it's 75 recipes, delicious, nutritious recipes. And in the choose section, it's find your purpose, choose your weight, and determine your timeline. We're going to talk about all of these. And then we're putting systems into place to make this happen. You have to have systems into place to achieve your goals. And in that, I include eating plants, recognizing hunger and satiety, not so easy, not breaking the seal. We'll talk about that. I don't recommend counting. I'm one dietitian that doesn't count, calculate, measure, or weigh. Set a schedule, monitor meal volume, and then master monotony. So we're going to break all of this down. I always say this because as a mother and as a daughter and as a dietitian, the hardest lesson I've learned in my life is that no matter how much I know or how much I want someone to change their diet or do what I think is best for them based on what I've seen, it doesn't matter. They have to want it. And I firsthand been heartbroken and devastated to watch people close to me make choices that led to poor outcomes, and with my clients as well. And I stopped trying to convince anyone. I will never try to convince anyone to do anything. So everything I'm offering you here today is just the stuff I've seen and the trends, but I will never try to convince anyone to eat a certain way, to lose weight, to gain weight, to do anything. This is your body. That's the other premise behind Choose You Now. It's about you and your choices. And I don't want you to tell me what to eat, and I'm not going to tell you what to eat. So I'm very passionate about that too. So the way I say that is that you could lead a human to healthy, but you can't make them eat. They have to want it. So the first thing I do with my clients is I say, what do you want? And I really want, in fact, I won't work with someone unless they really want this. And why do you want it? because if they don't want it, there's no point in working with me. We're going to be beating our heads against the wall. It's a waste of time and money and resources and energy. So I stopped doing that 15 years ago. So what do you want? And what does it really look like for you? I have my clients take a few moments when they're in a good space and to go within and say, what happens when you're at the end, meaning you're in the driver's seat and you know exactly how to be whatever weight you want to be, how to make the food choices you want to make, and to make them with intention. What does that feel like to you? Now, whether that's improving their labs or losing 100 pounds or reversing lifelong suffering that they've dealt with, chronic conditions, or whether it's walking into their closet and putting anything on and feeling good about it. Or like, I love to go back to this one client of mine because I love this so much because it was so visceral. She was a psychologist and she said she'd finished her weight loss and she was in maintenance mode. And she said to me, we were having a follow-up call and she's like, Juliana, I'm walking on the beach and I'm wearing my bikini and I have nothing around my waist and I feel so good. And I love that because it doesn't matter if it sounds like, oh, who cares? It's not a big deal. Because maybe someone else, my clients that are really sick and their life depends on it. It has to be visceral for you because you are the ones going to have to make those choices day in and day out. Every time you're tempted, every time you have to want it so bad that you're choosing that instead. It's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. And then I have my clients choose their weight, which we're going to talk about, and then determine the timeline. Again, I'm not going to tell anyone how to proceed. It's up to them. But we use a lot of different tools, data. We're collecting data. We are being curious. We are being our own, healthcare provider. We're just witnessing ourselves. We are learning our bodies and getting mastery. I want all of my clients, I tell them, to have a PhD in weight loss in their body by the time they're done with me. But more importantly, we're planting seeds because the ultimate PhD I want everyone to have is in weight loss maintenance so that you never have to be on this roller coaster ever again. This is like a lifelong, the subtitle of the book is Lose Weight for the Last Time, because once you know, remember, you can't unknow. So once you really understand how your body works and how certain foods do things and why you make the decisions that you make, you are in the driver's seat, whatever decision you make at that point. So some of the tools I use. When I say determine your weight, I use this is a scientific formula called the Hamwi formula. And basically for men, you're 106 pounds for the first 5 feet and 6 pounds per inch after that. And for women, 100 pounds for 5 feet and then 5 pounds per inch after that. So I'm let's just say 5'4", I'm 5'3" 3/4, but it all counts. And so let's just round up. So it'd be like 120 pounds, but then you have a buffer of plus or minus 10% on either end of that. That's about the healthy zone. So we use that as a target. That's what I have my clients target the Hamwi. And then we decide. So then as you get closer to that, then we make decisions on where you want to land. And I always ask my clients to find a wiggle room of 5 to 10 pounds because you're always going to have wiggle room for the rest of your life because holidays and celebrations and birthdays and whatever stuff happens. So you just have to give yourself 5 to 10 pound window because you're never going to be the exact same weight every single day for the rest of your life. Not usually. So we determine the goal weight. We use measuring tapes. I have them measure every month. They're your circumferential measurements. So you have more data. And then using a food journal. Food journal is so powerful, mostly for accountability, but also for analysis. Like you could look, what I do is I have my clients write a food journal and every week, the day before we meet, they submit their food journal. And I could look at the food journal and I could know ahead of time how the scale did because I could look for the trends and you learn yourself and it's a way of studying yourself and being more analytical about it. Again, most people don't want to get on the scale, but it's data. It's a data point. And if you could just divorce yourself from anything that it means, it's just a number. It's just data. And I know it's easy to say that and it can be emotional, but if you could look at it more objectively, it's a very effective tool to get on the scale every day. And then clothing feels. How are your clothing? That's an easy way, like to just kind of see how you feel. Just all of the things, just to have more and more, as many measurements as possible for yourself.